right, hi everyone. Welcome to D-Pod. As you can maybe notice, we have a new intro music that we're trying out. So here we are for another episode, and today we're gonna start up a new category of episodes. All right, so this is something we're calling Behind the Staff, or BTS for short. Anyways, so today our first guest for BTS is Nicholas Shu. All right, Nicholas is one of our new staff members who moved here from Berkeley with his wife Jeanette, and they joined our team this past summer. And Nicholas and I go back because I knew him as an undergrad, and he knew me as a younger leader. So maybe in today's interview we'll talk a little bit about that. But welcome, Nicholas, to the show. And you want to say hi real quick?
Hello, y'all. How's it going? Hello.
All right, Nicholas is, I think, kind of getting used to the mic setup here. He was like, it's like weird hearing myself.
Yep.
Is it still weird for you?
Yeah, just a little bit.
So, Nicholas, we're on the 4th floor of Greenwood, which is our normal studio for this podcast. How are you feeling right now?
No. When I went up to the 4th floor, I was like, what does he mean go up to the 4th floor? And then I saw this huge setup, and it's like overlooking the entire like Chicago campus. It looks very nice, yeah. Very, very bright, nice Saturday morning. I think it's a great day to record.
Yeah, maybe we'll take a picture afterward and post it in the show notes or something. But yeah, like if you've never been to the 4th floor of my place, it's just like a little roof terrace, but then there's a little bit of indoor space that we're basically using up for all the podcast equipment. And right now it's a beautiful sunny Saturday morning, and right outside my window you can actually see Northbourne. So yeah, that's where we're at. So well, Nicholas, so today the goal is through these times we're gonna try to get to know the stories behind some of the staff, so that maybe the other staff also, but the students and whoever's interested can kind of get to know the staff team here at Chicago, Grace Point, Chicago Hyde Park. So I wanted to just start by exploring kind of your journey to faith. I think that's something that's important for all of us to know about each other. So let's just start there, huh? Why don't we talk about what was your spiritual background like before coming to college?
Yeah, that's a good question. So as some of you may know or may not know, I actually came into college as an agnostic. My parents weren't Christian at all. And then when I was in high school, middle school, faith was just nothing that I really considered. Actually, Christianity was totally a mythical story for me. I didn't believe that Jesus existed. I didn't believe anything about Genesis. It seemed like a fable when I was reading it. A lot younger, and then for me, normal life was just try to do well at your job, do well in academics, and basically pursue that. But in terms of a higher being, I mean, I had no real understanding of there being a higher being, but I couldn't say for certain because I didn't have that knowledge, of course. So I left that open, and sometimes I would do these superstitious praying, if I do good, then something good will happen, kind of like karma in that way. But yeah, not really regarding there being a personal God at all. So yeah, that was me before coming into college.
Yeah, I think people have kind of various degrees of not knowing about Christianity or not believing. But if I remember correctly, there was a Christmas Bible study that I gave when you were in college. And that was, it's almost Christmas time now. Actually, we're having a Christmas service this Sunday.
Yeah.
But I remember you came up to me or we talked afterward, and you're like, I had no idea that Christmas is about Jesus.
Yeah.
Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I always thought it was about Santa Claus, Saint Nick, that story because my name's Nick. I resonate with that story. So then I was like, oh yeah, that's awesome. But then when I heard it was about Jesus, oh, whoa, that's totally not what I've learned.
Yeah. That's funny. That's so crazy that you have come from a place of basically virtually no knowledge about Christianity, and to now here you are a church planter out in Chicago, doing college ministry and sharing the gospel with people. So that's wild. So so we'll get into that a little bit more. But so what was your if any was there any exposure to Christianity at all while you were in high school or I guess growing up what were the touch points that you did have?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I actually did go to some church services. But I guess it was pretty infrequent. One of the first instances I can remember was in middle school when one of my friends invited me to one of his church services on Sunday. Because we were pretty good friends, I would go over, and he promised that we would play Battle Frontier on his Xbox. So that's why I went, so I could play the Xbox, because I didn't have my own gaming Xbox console at that time, and so that was a good way to play video games while my parents were away. So yeah, that's when I started coming out to like some of his services. Or his church services. I came out like probably 2 times after that, and then he also showed me this like they call it a youth group. I didn't know too much about a youth group. And I would go to the fun activities pretty much on Wednesday nights right after my swimming. And because swimming ended at 7 p.m., they already had their Bible study apparently from 6 to 7. And then 7 p.m. to onward was fun activities. So my experience of youth group was just pretty much fun activities and not so much about the Bible itself. And so that was my main exposure. And then in high school, because I like moved to another school, I wasn't with any of the people that I was with in my middle school, and I didn't really do anything related to church or Christianity at all.
Well, so your friend, do you know if your friend was trying to evangelize to you like by offering the video game, or was he just needed someone to play video games with?
I think it was he needed someone to play video games with, because the game we were playing was a 2-player game. So and then his sister's like 8 years older and doing actual work. So we as delinquents wanted to just mess around and have fun.
That's funny. His sister had already grown up and wouldn't play video games with him, so he brought you to church. Well, hey, God can use anything, man. So that early exposure was key. Well, I know that you played a lot of video games, and I think that's maybe a topic for another episode. Maybe you and Agape, we need to have you guys on at the same time, and
oh boy,
we need to talk about it. We need to explore your past, with regards to video games and kind of how that affected your guys' lives, or what you guys think about it now. Because I know now you don't play video games, and I know you and Agape both went through kind of a period with regards to kind of struggling with that and thinking about those issues. So I think that'll be a fascinating episode. So
coming soon.
Coming soon. So let's kind of fast forward to college then. Okay, so here you are. Tell us a little bit about like the journey into college, like, Berkeley. Did you want to go to Berkeley? Kind of, tell us a little bit about just journey to college, and then like how did church start? Because, you didn't really have much background. You didn't have much motivation. So how did you end up in church in college?
Yeah. So high school is when I actually started to take my academics more seriously. I noticed that I was falling behind in a lot of my math classes. So then what I did my freshman year was I took 2 additional community college math courses after school, in addition to my math courses that I was taking in high school. So then I would be able to get ahead in math. And then I also did some self-studying for like different AP courses as well in order to get higher AP scores, and also take more APs. And the whole point of that was just to catch up on what I thought I was already missing since my middle school. And so I had this really strong desire and drive to basically really do well in life, and try to get people's approval through academics, and then also through sports as well. I did a lot of swimming. So I joined the swim team my sophomore year, but I had been in the swim club since 7th grade. And so because people were I was considered one of the fast ones, but realistically speaking, our school wasn't that fast. But but somehow I was one of the top swimmers there, and then they're getting attention there. And so I thought like Berkeley was like that one of those dream schools. I mean, actually the real dream school was Stanford, but
Stanford.
Boo Stanford. Yeah. But because they missed out on having me, I joined Berkeley instead. But I was pretty excited when I got Berkeley. Actually, when I was applying to different colleges and some of the places that I was getting rejected by, like UCLA, I was like getting pretty upset, because at that point I was like, oh man, am I gonna get like one of the nice colleges that are like pretty cheap? But then like comparatively, because I was in-state tuition is a lot better. But when I got Berkeley, I was like, oh yes, I got my dream school, one of my dream schools, and then even there's another story. I was doing the major that I chose, bioengineering. I chose that because I looked up online what's the major that pays the highest, and bioengineering was one of them. So I also wanted to make a lot of money too. So that factored into my high school experience. It was striving for the best in academics and career, and then social relationships as well. So then when I went to college, that was my main driver as well. I wanted to do well in school, try to find and set my path for my career, and then also make a lot of friends as well. And yeah, the church to me was like the last thing on my mind. It wasn't something that like I really considered. I mean, I didn't even know what church really was, to be honest. So like I would go with my friends to like try different experiences, and pretty much like just have fun. I think I was just like indulging in the flesh a lot during my freshman year, not really considering too much about like deeper questions like what is life, what is my purpose, or like what happens after death. Those were like far in the back of my mind at that time. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know the thing about bioengineering and how you looked up what makes the most money.
Yeah.
And then you also mentioned how can I get the good education for like the cheapest amount. So money like was really on your mind, I guess.
Yeah.
And then I guess like even throughout your college days, so then a lot of your studying and striving was for your future job and
exactly.
and future kind of security with regards to money.
Yeah.
So okay.
I mean, I wanted to be a doctor at one point, but then I realized I couldn't handle blood at all. I mean, doctor would have been the best major. I think at that time when I was looking it up, it was like $200K salary. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's like double the six figures. I was like, wow.
Wow. Okay. Wow. That's interesting. Okay. So that's a little bit of your background, a little bit of your motivation coming into college. So yeah, you weren't looking for church. You didn't even know what church was. So then how did you start coming out to church?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. So it's more like I wasn't looking for church, but church found me in a way. Yeah, so my first experience actually coming out to, so like one of these Christian events was actually ironically through one of my atheist friends. So I say he's atheist because he actually studied like reasons for atheism. And so he had a pretty strong like worldview in that way. And because he was like, he was really against religion, especially Christianity, he would make fun of it. And then because I was like, I wanted to socially conform as well, I would make fun of it as well. And he thought of this amazing idea where one of these Christian groups on campus was hosting a free Korean barbecue welcome night. And I mean, the idea of free Korean barbecue, like who's going to miss out on that? So we both wanted to go, but we knew, well, I didn't know, but he knew that like generally in Christian events, they're going to have like this beginning portion that you like listen to, and it sounds like it's indoctrinating you. So we could miss that and just join for the last 5 minutes of that event. And so we went at the last 5 minutes of the event, took the Korean barbecue and left. So that was an experience of like my first experience exposure to like Christian people. I actually didn't interact with much people during that time because I think when we were in the back seat for like those last 5 minutes, we were just like saying, oh man, like look at that guy, or like what's he doing, or like, man, let's just take the Korean barbecue now. But then I feel like God used that moment because about 3 months or 2 months later, one of my friends a new friend that I made in my bioengineering course, he invited me to a hot pot dinner. So he used my my love for food to bring me out, because he was like, oh, there's a free hot pot dinner at my friend's place. You want to come? And I'm like, yeah, sure, free hot pot, let's go. And so I go, and then like I'm over there, and like there just so happens to be so many Christians, and I'm talking with them. Like every time I'm talking, they're like, oh yeah, like I'm like part of this Christian fellowship. And then I'm curious, like, oh, like what is this fellowship? And they're like, koinonia. And I'm like, koinonia? why does that sound so familiar? And then I realized, oh shoot, that was the place I stole Korean barbecue from. And so I felt pretty guilty. And like, yeah, I couldn't do anything about it. So I was like, oh man, I might as well stay. And also I was like in another home that was 20 minutes away. I couldn't drive. And yeah, so I just stayed, hung out with them. But that experience was actually quite different from what I was used to. Yeah, like in high school, like the way I related with my friends, it was more like, hey, like how do we advance more in our own careers, in our own lives? And purely the relationship itself was built on like how do we benefit one another in that way. But then when it came to like talking with the Christians in that Christian fellowship, my experience was totally different. Like I didn't feel like I had to put a guard up to show my best self. And often when they were talking, they would ask me questions that were more like personal in a way, like how's your family doing? Like what's your family like? Those weren't questions that I was used to growing up, because I think most of the conversations I had were purely superficial before. And so there was something different about that. But of course, there were moments when like I was pretty busy. I didn't come out much. Like my whole entire freshman year, like sometimes they would ask me if like I was interested, but then I got really busy on Friday nights. This is usually when we have our Bible studies, Friday nights, with climbing. And I loved climbing at that time. The Friday deal was like $10 for a student discount, just to climb that night. So I would pretty much go climbing instead of Bible study. And since then, like, yeah, my whole entire freshman year, I didn't really go out to any of the Christian events at that time.
Yeah, so that's super interesting how, like you're saying, so kind of God somehow orchestrated this series of events where you go to Korean barbecue at Koinonia. Koinonia, by the way, for people who don't know what that means, it's the Greek word for fellowship. So we call it Koinonia fellowship, but it's just fellowship, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. And then the hot pot dinner, which I'm assuming that friend actually wanted to kind of give you some exposure to Christians. And so that's why that friend invited you. And then here you are, like, you're like, okay, this is interesting. They seem interested in me, but then you're not ready to come to like Christian stuff, right? Like you came to a hot pot dinner and that's understandable, but I guess people were inviting you during that time. But you're like, dude, why are these people keep like texting me? You know, it's like, I want to go climb, right? Like, and Bible studies happen to be on Friday nights, which is when, you know, a lot of students are, I guess, hanging out and doing the things that they do. And for you, that was climbing. And we'll definitely explore that later in this. Because I think that part of your life is super interesting, the whole climbing journey. But so then what changed? Okay, so you weren't interested at first in becoming Christian or even attending Christian events, besides maybe the free food stuff. Did something change for you? Like what made you then consider, because at some point, like, because I joined Koinonia staff when you were a sophomore, I believe. And at that time you started coming out. I don't remember the exact sequence. So what happened in your life during that time, or, you know, to make you start considering that?
Yeah. So different life events happened. I think the first main thing that I would like to attribute to is my summer going into sophomore year. So this is when I was like I was like, wow, this is my first summer as a college student. And I'm like staying around in Berkeley, like just with my roommates. And like I had so much free time that I would spend it like pretty much climbing a lot. And then like watching horror movies as well. And then there was this one moment when I was climbing, I like injured my finger. And then after that injury, I was like, oh shoot, I have nothing else to do. Like, I don't know what to do. I really love climbing that much that like, I felt actually pretty sad. I was a bit depressed at that time. And I was like, oh man, like I'm here over the summer. I'm wasting my time trying to recover this like tendon injury that I had. And so by chance, like the people who were like reaching out to me for the Christian fellowship, they like, I hadn't like talked with them for like over like 2 or 3 months. They didn't text me during that time, but it just so happened that one of the mentors at that time reached out to me and was like, hey, like I know that at one time you were like coming out to our Christian event and like we're interested, like are you free to like just talk about that? And I was like, oh yeah, sure. Like I'm totally free now. And he also like said he'll like pay for my coffee also. And even though I didn't drink coffee, I was like, free food, might as well get that. So I went and talked with him, and he expressed how like yeah, the during the summer they're having like these Bible study series, and like if I were free, if I'd be able to join. And because I had a positive experience in the past with them, and I was totally free because I had injured my finger from climbing, I considered actually joining for one of these Bible studies for the first time, to actually listen to what the Bible had to say. And so I came to the first Bible study, and one of the earlier messages that I remember at that time was in Luke 19. It talks about Zacchaeus, the chief tax collector. So, and he was considered short. And yeah, I mean, if you haven't heard that Bible study before, it's pretty amazing. But I felt pretty addressed, honestly, during that time. Like, I didn't know that the Bible was something like, when I thought of the Bible, my conception of the Bible was like a list of commandments, essentially, or like a fable story. But then this was like a story of an encounter with Jesus, where the tax collector Zacchaeus, he was considered like short in stature, and he like had made it in the world. He was like the chief of tax collectors. He was like at the top of the food chain, and for some reason he wasn't satisfied. He wanted something that, like, yeah, he went after all these things, and then in the end didn't get what he wanted. But then when he heard that Jesus was coming, he like sold all that he had and went to find Jesus. And it just goes to show that like the deepest desire that we have, at that moment, like for Zacchaeus, he saw that Jesus is what he needed first, more than what he could have earned. And for me, that personally struck, because I felt like I was striving after all these things in the world, and it wasn't satisfying this deep desire that I had. And it wasn't like I was like failing at school. Like, actually, I was doing pretty well. But for some reason, every time I was chasing after these things and getting what I wanted, it didn't fill that like gap that I had in my heart. And when the answer in the Bible at least said it was like Jesus is the one who like ultimately gives peace, I decided to actually consider investing in Christianity for that reason, because a lot of what I was chasing after didn't really address those bigger questions of like, what is my purpose in life? What happens after death? Like, these things weren't things that like jobs didn't have answers to. And so I went like right after, someone offered this Introduction to Christianity 101. It's like a kind of like like those books, the dummy 101 books for like coding or something like that, like
Christianity for Dummies.
Yeah, Christianity for Dummies, like that's the course that they're offering, course 101. And to me, like, I was like, oh yeah, might as well like learn the basics, because like I'm making all these assumptions about Christianity, might as well like actually learn what it's about. And it was only like 6 chapters, so it's pretty short. And so when I took that chapter, or like went through the chapters, I was learning so many new things. I think that was the most shocking experience in my, like, I guess or undergrad life. Just partly because my worldview had totally changed, like my understanding of Genesis, like how it was written poetically and not so much as like an actual like lab manual that you're supposed to follow, or like the historicity of the Bible itself. I was like, who knew that the Bible is like historical?
Because you thought it was all like fables and stuff, right?
Yeah, I thought it was purely fables, but then like it's rooted in history, like archaeology, internal evidence, external evidence, and then like all these like manuscripts. Like, fun fact, there's like at least 27,000 manuscripts of the New Testament. Like, this is just the New Testament, and like I understood what the Old Testament, New Testament was at that time. Like, I learned about that, and then I also learned what sin was. Like, for me, like when I understood sin before, I was like, oh, maybe it's just all the bad things that you do. But no, it's more like our relationship with God, how we severed that. And so that was also mind opening as well. And then I learned about like how I'm like every person is a sinner. Like I didn't know about that aspect, because I thought if you're a good person, then like you're good with God. Like, even if I like don't even believe in him, and if I just do good in this world, then like maybe I can make this heaven that exists, if it exists. But really, it's actually like a relationship. And I learned that God is personal as well. And then that Jesus was a real person. Yeah, that was pretty shocking. Because like, yeah, he was on par with Santa Claus at that moment before. But then when I learned that, like, no, there's evidence even outside the Bible. So like different historians mention about Christ, Jesus Christ, like Tacitus, Flavius, like all these guys, they mention him. And they're like Roman historians, Jewish historians who have no interest in Christianity or like promoting Christianity. And so, yeah, it was pretty neat to see that as well. And understanding that even like majority of reputable scholars believe that Jesus is also real. Yeah. And so, yeah, that was pretty nice also.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Nicholas is going to teach all of Course 101 right now.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to just, maybe we should just have a Course 101 episode and Nicholas can just tell you everything there is to know. So, no, for me, this is really refreshing to hear. I'll tell you the reason why. It's because a lot of the stuff you're saying, like, like who Jesus is, the historicity of the Bible, like sin and things like that. Like, I think if you like maybe grew up in church and maybe you went to like Sunday school, you maybe heard a lot of this stuff. People hear this stuff and it kind of doesn't really strike them as amazing. But what I'm hearing from your story is like, because you didn't have that much background, like as you were introduced to the gospel, and I think you were kind of spiritually hungry at the time, you were seeking for something and maybe you didn't even know what that was. But like everything you were learning was just hitting you. Or, I guess the word we use in Christian circles is like, it was convicting you. It was like what? Like, I didn't know about this, and when we do ministry and, talk to people and share the gospel, when people have that reaction, that's so refreshing because that's how it should be. And sometimes I find that like those of us maybe who grew up in church, like we kind of lose the wonder of it. Or maybe if we've been on staff for a long time, we sort of lose the wonder of the very thing that we're saying. But I can sense even now as you kind of remember your story, like how amazing it was as you were like learning these individual things. So there was course, and then so you were kind of learning a lot, and then was there anything else that kind of helped you in that journey to becoming a Christian?
Yeah. So actually, after Course 101, when I had like that intellectual understanding, part of me was still fearful of actually making that decision to follow Jesus, because like following Jesus has a cost. Like it's not easy. And there are things that like you're going to miss out on or feel like you miss out on. And so my main hang up was like, how can you live Christian life? Like Christian life just seemed too hard to live. And practically speaking, like, even though I was seeing like all these older ones trying to live it out, because I didn't go out as much, I only saw them in the context of Bible study. I didn't really understand how people live Christian life as well until coming into Thanksgiving retreat. So Thanksgiving retreat is a retreat that our church held around Thanksgiving time. It's like about 3 days where we go to a site. In this case, it was like one of our church headquarters, and we just give thanks to God, just all the things that have happened in the past year. And so like I went to actually join that retreat because I was interested in just seeing like what happens during retreats to begin with. And so I went and I was hearing all these different like amazing like testimonies by so testimonies are like these little like stories that people are sharing of how God worked in people's lives. And they're talking about their burden for their friends, burden for coworkers, trying to share the gospel. And then others were giving thanks for just different ways in which God interceded into their lives, like how like different people gave generous love offerings to people anonymously, to people who were struggling financially. That was like something that I was like, whoa, like that's different. Like that's not normal. And then the one story that really hit me the most was actually from one of the older mentors. Actually, turns out to be DP's peer, but he shared a story how he worked at like a really massive gaming company called Zynga. He was actually one of the really good developers at that time, and he was actually ministering to my peers who were struggling with gaming, and then he felt convicted that what he was doing was just there was a disconnect between what he was doing as his job and then who he was ministering to. And so he made the decision out of a commitment to God to actually give up that job and seek another job in another industry because of the people he's ministering to who were struggling with video games. And so when he tried to leave, his boss actually tried to give him a lump sum of cash and give him raises and things like that. Like, I'm talking like, I think what I heard was like millions, but I mean, like, it's a high number, and like, this is not like an easy value to look over. But then he decided to surrender that, and he said, no, like, I'm like really committed to God. I want to, be a good witness to these students I'm ministering to. And when he did that, like, and he actually moved over as he was sharing the story, I was just like, whoa, like, he's willing to give up all that for like Christianity, like God. And like, that means like his convictions are pretty strong. He like really understands, like,
he like really believes it.
Yeah, he really believes it. And I mean, like, when I heard about Christians in the past, like, my understanding was just Sundays. Like, you just go on your Sunday, like, and then that was it. But then here he is, like, living it out, like, to the fullest, and like really placing his trust in this thing. And that really rocked my own worldview and like helped me to like really consider, like, wow, maybe this is something I should consider, because like, this is the purpose of life. If it's not like money, it's not like career, then like, what is it? And so to him, it was like Christianity. And so I really used that moment to actually reflect and go through with Course 101 again, and just really reevaluate, like, what do I want my life to be about? And I'm so thankful actually what he did, because those guys he was ministering to, one of them, a couple or one of them stayed, and he's actually serving out in the New York church right now. And he's a really good friend of mine as well. So I'm just very thankful for what he did. But yeah, as I was reflecting on like Course 101, I just saw that, like, wow, if I died right now, I feel like, I would have massive regrets of how I lived my life. And so I wanted to really consider Christianity and give it a shot. And when I understood as faith, it wasn't so much like you need to have a massive amount of faith to make that step. But it's the object of faith that really matters. And when hearing all this evidence for Jesus, hearing what people do for Jesus, like, that made me understand that, like, Jesus is that solid faith or solid object of faith that I can actually rest my foot upon and like actually take that step, even though it wasn't a big step that I want to, like, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it was a massive step, like, from becoming agnostic to Christian. But like, for me, if it was like a little step to like, man, I'm going to place my trust in Jesus, I want to do this and try to live Christian life, because I think this is actually real now. Like, this is convicting me. And I remember like making that decision to follow Jesus. I went into the prayer. I told you, I think, during the Thanksgiving retreat, and we started to actually, like, we prayed, and then I think that was the first time I saw you cry for the first time. Yeah, that was quite an experience. But yeah, I felt overall, when coming out of that experience, I was really grateful. I just felt this sense of peace afterwards, knowing that, wow, like, I have a Father in heaven who loves me. Like, my security, like, all that my future is secured, and I don't have to strive after these things to gain significance, because God calls me significant. Like, all these things were just so amazing to me that, like, there was no other, like, I guess, proper response than to just give praise and thanksgiving during that time.
Wow. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, man. It's bringing back memories for me too, because I forgot some of the details around this. But man, as you're saying it, I'm brought back to that time. And man, you know what I really appreciate? So, you know, you talked about my peer's story, you know, the one about him quitting Zynga. And I remember when he did that, it was shocking to all of us. It was like, you know, I was like, wait, you're really going to do that? Because, yeah, as much as I agreed with his decision, because the reasoning behind this decision was so sound. It was, you know, he's working for this like gaming empire company, and he has these students that he's trying to love and shepherd and disciple, and some of them are struggling with gaming addiction, and you know, like video games are fun, but man, it has this power to like destroy people's lives, and I don't know, and it's just, I don't know, like frankly, from my perspective, it's just a waste of time. But and so, but yeah, he had like a really good gig, like, and you mentioned this guy was like interviewed on NPR, like for like his coding prowess. I don't understand how someone can be so good at coding, but anyways, apparently he is. So,
Yeah.
And so then like he had moved to the Bay Area just for that job, you know, because he had gone to school in Seattle, and yeah, and then he decided to just give it all up, and like you mentioned, like the company was like trying whatever they could, throwing whatever at him to try to get him to stay, but he decided to not do that out of his conviction. And what I really appreciate about your story is that you heard that story, because he was just sharing his experience, and your response was not to be intimidated by that or to be like, wait, what the heck, like I can't do that, but it was more to be inspired, right?
Yeah,
and to say, okay, that's not normal. What that guy did is not normal, and he must really believe that this is true, and he must really love this person of Jesus. And in some ways, I think for me, it shows that you're an inspirable person, which is something I think I've appreciated about you over the years. And I think that quality in a Christian is really important, because we're supposed to be inspired by who Jesus is, like the great lengths to which he went to love people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. And so I had a bunch of like questions that I was going to ask you about your faith in college, but maybe we'll have to do that in another episode. But maybe we can just do this. What's like, so you became Christian, that was sophomore year? So that was like November. So that was Thanksgiving retreat sophomore year. Mm-hmm. So November. So from then to the end of college, like, could you just maybe tell us about one spiritual low point, and then what was one spiritual high point, and just kind of highlight that for us?
Yeah. So one spiritual low point for me during my undergrad. So after you become Christian, like there's like this honeymoon phase essentially where like you're running a spiritual high for a bit. But then obviously like there's things that kick in, like you still have to do your like homework. Like homework is still there.
Shoot.
They're like different hobbies are still existing. And so like one thing that I was struggling with a lot, like I played so many like this is a podcast maybe for later.
Yeah,
but
video games keep coming up.
Yeah.
We're definitely gonna do another episode.
But like, yeah, I was really addicted to video games, and even after became Christian for the first time, like I stopped playing video games for like about 5 months. But then there are like moments like you're just sitting in your dorm and you have nothing else to do, and like, well, there's video games to fill up that time. And so like my summer in junior year, after like not having played for a bit, a new game came out of like this series that I really liked beforehand. It was like called Dragon Quest, and it was Dragon Quest 9 that came out, and it was all on PC, and it looked so cool. And I was like, oh man, like I just want to try it out. Like let me just buy it. It was like on Steam, just came out released, and I bought it and I started playing it, and then I just went back into my old habits of just like totally zoning out everyone. Like when I was playing that game, I didn't really interact with much people, not even my brother, my family at all. And like, during that time, I wasn't being a good witness, because usually when I'm at home, I try to be like a good Christian witness. My parents, my mom had, fun fact, my mom became Christian after I had become Christian independently of me. But like, my dad wasn't Christian at that time. My brother wasn't even Christian. And so, yeah, that was a really spiritually low moment for me, because like at that time, like I was escaping into this world of like fantasy, role playing and things like that like really pulled me away from like growing in my faith and learning to love others. And so, yeah, that was a tough time. Coming back after I felt pretty guilty, to say the least, knowing that like, wow, I did not use my time wisely at all. And like, maybe that contributed to why like my relationship with my brother isn't as great as it could have been. And so, yeah, there's a lot of things that I regret about that time. Very spiritually low moment for me. I guess to contrast that, one of the higher moments.
Well, maybe before you go into the higher moments, I do want to, because video games keeps coming up, so I do feel like maybe we should talk about it a little bit. And because video games, like games, and nowadays there's PC, but there's like phone and there's all sorts of things, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, like all things considered, like, video games is kind of a morally neutral thing, right? It's like it's not that video games are evil in and of themselves, except maybe some of them are because of the content that some of them have. And we've been talking about this during one of the First Corinthians Bible studies in First Corinthians 6, right? But we talk about how all things are lawful, like that's what the Corinthians were claiming, right? And then Paul shoots right back, but not everything is helpful, right? And then so that's kind of one of the ways in which we're supposed to reason as Christians about like how to live maturely. So what was like, because you were even saying like you felt like really guilty after playing all these video games and things like that. So what was it about that was pricking your conscience? Like, okay, yeah, video games are neutral, but like, why is it sometimes not neutral in the way that it actually plays out in people's lives, or maybe how it played out in your life?
Yeah. So the moment became like not neutral for me. So like, I think like from my experience, because I know I have like this addictive pattern, like what happened was like, I didn't really, my main priority during that time was just to play video games. And I didn't really consider God at all. Like, during that time, I didn't consider what it might do with my own faith as well. Like, my understanding of the whole entire world was like totally shifting in the sense that like, wow, there's no longer a spiritual battle, but no, there's this online battle that I need to engage with. And it became, it was toxic in the sense that like it was affecting not just my own spiritual life, like my own convictions of who God is, what's the purpose of my life. But it was also being not a good witness to my non-Christian family as well, who like, if I were trying to evangelize to like my brother or my dad, like to say like, wow, God is real. Like this is like thing you should seek after. But then they see me playing video games the whole entire time. Like what does that communicate? It's like, there's a huge disconnect and like, I guess hypocrisy in that moment. So, yeah, that was the moment when I knew like I was guilty and I wasn't being like, we use this term like steward of time. Like we have limited time on this earth. Especially like after you go into college and you start working, you have limited time with your family as well. And to be a steward, like God, like the Bible talks about like stewardship, like in 2 Timothy 2, it talks about what God has entrusted to you, like these things, entrustment. Like we've been given this gospel, and yet when I'm or like you're given, in this case, I was given time. I was given time by God to try to minister to my family, but then I was spending that time elsewhere in this fantasy world that like doesn't really produce much value other than just give me like
personal pleasure or something.
Personal pleasure. And so I knew that was wrong as well, because I really took that identity of like being a soldier for Christ like seriously, but then when that like the video games like took that identity away from me, that like I knew that was bad. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that a part of the issue with the video games is that it sort of it creates sins of omission. There's like all these things we should be doing now that we're children of God, now that we're soldiers for Christ, we're ambassadors for Christ. Like we have not just a new identity, but actual roles that God has given us. And then when you get sucked into the pattern of gaming again and spending hours a day doing that, that's hours a day that you're not doing certain things that God has called us to do. Yeah. Right. And so, and it just, as you were talking, it reminded me of that proverb from Proverbs 28, where it says, whoever works his land will have plenty of bread, but he who follows worthless pursuits will have plenty of poverty. Right. And I think worthless pursuits can be a lot of different things, but I think for some people it's video games comes to mind, right? It's sort of, it's a pursuit. It's something, it's fun even, right? It's super fun. I mean, I used to play games too, but at some point we have to kind of like grow out of that, or, we have to recognize that, wow, there's like work that God has entrusted to us, and we have to engage in that. And then I think you sort of alluded to this, but it does something to our hearts as well, in terms of kind of not making us interested in other people, not making us even interested in God, right? And there's a certain deadening of our heart that happens when people get into whatever it is. Like for you, it was video games, but gosh, it's not just about video games, right? Like it can be anything, right?
and that's what we call idols, right? Like
Yeah.
things that replace God. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, man. So now coming back to the earlier point. So what were some of the spiritual high points? I think that's where you were going.
Yeah. So some spiritual high points actually happened when I took like this step of faith and like not really prioritizing my own academics, but spending my time to like serve different service opportunities essentially. So there's something that we do called like VDoc. It's like a Valentine's Day of compassion that we do as a church to pretty much love the elderly because during like Valentine's Day, a lot of the focus, at least from pop culture media, is like you like your significant other, but then a lot of people are neglected during that time, especially the elderly. And so that really broke my heart. Like when I saw that there were these elderly people who like, I mean, their time is short, like it's really short. And so I just felt this sense of burden for these elderly people. And actually one of the ministries I really wanted to do after graduating was elderly care ministry for that reason. And that was a high point for me because that's when I really caught the vision of like, wow, like their time is short and we need to like do something now to like really share the gospels with as many people as possible. Another high point was a mission trip as well. When I went to Thailand summer, I think it was, oh man, I forgot which summer going into junior year potentially, like the first part of it.
Yeah, I think it was 2017, summer 2017.
Yeah. So I was with DP during that time. Also, yeah, we went on a mission trip, a group of 12. That was really fun. Like all you do, your focus is like hit the ground running, go there, share the gospel with as many people as possible. And you're not gonna like most people you're meeting, you're not gonna see again. And so there's this sense of even greater urgency to go out and that's when I was like, wow, like I could do this for the rest of my life type of moment. And I felt like really connected with God during that time as well. They're also like seeing my friends become Christian. That was a really spiritual high moment as well. Like just knowing their backgrounds, like they were like, yeah, totally pagan, to say the least. But then when they became Christian and seeing them serve, I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like God works miracles in people's lives. Like, yeah, this is truly not something that like any other thing I've seen could do. And so I was personally like really inspired by those moments as well. And so, yeah, those were like, I guess the main highlights of my spiritual high points from college.
Yeah. So it sounds like a lot of moments where you learn to give out, where you learn to do ministry, share the gospel, step out in faith and like talk about what you believe with people. And you fell in love with that. Mm-hmm. And then you saw how it was impacting not just your life, but your friends' lives as they became saved. And then you saw transformation and then you got to do it together, right? And then it was exciting. So did that kind of play into your decision to, because obviously I guess after college, you decided to stay on and, I guess that was the summer, we graduated you off and then we moved to Chicago to plant the church and you stayed on to be part of the staff team. Can you tell me just a little bit about why you chose to do that, make that transition?
Yeah. So it was, I wasn't too sure whether I was going to stay at this church because like originally in my senior year, I was kind of teetering back and forth. I was like, man, like I had such a great experience here, but like maybe real life starts now. Like maybe like after I graduate, I could like go get my job and like find another church. But then when I reflected on just these past 3 years that I've been coming out consistently, I realized that, wow, God has placed in my life so many relationships. He has introduced different people to me to help me grow in my faith. And I think one thing I didn't really I took for granted was that like our church has a huge focus on like our personal relationship with God, focusing on devotions as well as evangelism as well. And when I heard different people's stories who went to other churches, it's not always that case. It's more like, oh, you go on Sunday and then maybe you have one life group in the middle of the week. But then, in terms of like where people are living, people are like miles away from one another, and so they're not seeing each other in each other's homes, which was but like in Grace Point, like people were in each other's homes. There's like this rule called the refrigerator rights. Like you could go into someone's home and take whatever you want from the fridge. Like that was like super, like something that I didn't really think about, but I was like, wow, this is like a really amazing culture that I want to be a part of and add to it as well. And so, yeah, I couldn't really like give that up for like, if I wanted to find a new job, like I shouldn't just give it up so easily. And so I actually had to reflect on that and consider like giving up my old internship return offer because it was too far, and I wanted to be near the people who were like I was growing in faith with and serving alongside with, and also that mission to share the gospel. Like, wow, we have so many resources that we're building. We have many new ideas that we want to do to share the gospel. And as I hear different people being saved, like this year, we've had at least 555 salvations. Like, wow, we can do work if we like actually like obey God's calling. So that was the reason I wanted to stay, because of all that was going on with just growing in faith as well as like evangelism.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned how like, it's not like a knock to other churches in terms of like, oh, like, because I think pastors and church leaders are heroically trying to, have people live out the faith, and, and they do church service and small groups, which we also do. Like, we believe in that stuff. I think we had the unique advantage, kind of almost as an accident of history, that we were planted by a college campus. And because of that, the kind of daily rhythms of college life, where you kind of are in each other's homes and each other's dorms. And, we experienced that on the college campus, and we kind of decided to kind of keep that culture. And because we realized how healthy that was, how biblical that was. And so, yeah, I'm personally thankful that, I got to experience that in college, and now, wherever we are now, here we are in Chicago, and we're trying to continue to live that way, live the Acts 2 church, which definitely we'll need to do another episode on that. So, man, just have so many ideas right now, writing all these down. So, okay. So we're going to try to wrap up in the next 5 minutes or so. And maybe I'll ask you this, okay? Because I guess you have a unique vantage point in some ways, because you knew me. So I knew you as an undergrad, but then you also knew me as a younger leader. Before I was full-time even, so I was a co-vocational minister back then. I worked at Salesforce when I was ministering to you guys. And I can imagine some of our students wanting to ask you, so what was DP and Kata like? Or maybe we can just focus, we don't have too much time, so just focus on me for this set of questions. But what was the DP like when I was young? I feel very vulnerable asking you this question. Oh boy. All right, I'll give you the mic here.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me first describe one of my earliest memories of him. We were playing this game. I forgot what it was called, honestly. I don't
remember what the game was.
Yeah, but we were in like two rooms, and we were all sitting on chairs, and then part of the game involved you like standing up and sitting down. And I didn't know DP too well at that time, but I just remember he stood up and sat down, and one of those like Costco metal chairs just broke. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what that means, but dang, that's the first time I've ever seen that chair broken.
Yeah, dude, my memory of it is that I didn't stop. I was sitting, the sitting motion just continued all the way to the floor.
Yeah, so like physically speaking, I was pretty intimidated by that, but it was pretty hilarious also as well. So yeah, that helped lighten the mood quite a bit.
That's funny because that's Jeanette, your wife. That's her first impression of me.
Yeah. But yeah, there were some other things I heard about DP as well. Like there's this term called like Beast Feast.
Oh, gosh.
And like I think it was coined like after 9 p.m. and you have another meal. Hence the term Beast Feast, because you don't eat another meal usually after 9 p.m. But then he told us all these stories, like how he made like this 5 fat sauce like pasta. It was like butter, bacon oil, like just pretty much like all the like
it's just carbonara.
Yeah. And you would eat that, and then like our friends would try to like make fun of DP. Like when we made the staff appreciation video, we did a Beast Feast montage where we had like 4 hands with fries, and it was just all going into the guy who was representing DP at that time. Yeah, so like I just knew he liked that like beast mode. He also really enjoyed ice cream. Or what I thought he like really enjoyed ice cream. Like one of our vision trips that we went to, like we went to Michigan, and like literally every day we had ice cream. Like that was the most ice cream I've ever eaten in my entire life. I was like, man, this guy, he loves food. I think that's what I was concluding. Like, he really loves food.
I do. That hasn't changed.
And it hasn't changed. But yeah, I mean, I love food too. So I really appreciated that as well. But yeah, I guess like seriously speaking, he was also like a pretty awesome mentor. Like, I think one thing that I really appreciate was like, he was like kind of like a second spiritual father, or like a spiritual father to me. So like a second father. He mentored me a lot, taught me how to live Christian life in a way that was pleasing to God, how to grow in my own Christian journey, and then as well as like how to love others. And so I grew a lot during that time, and I can expand more on that later, maybe in another podcast. But like, yeah, I think just him being an older figure in my life, and having so much wisdom from just like 8 years of more experience than me. So like, and having lived Christian life for 8 years longer than me. And yeah, I really appreciated that. And I've matured to be the person that I am today because of him. And so I'm very grateful for that as well. And part of the reason why I also wanted to go out to Chicago was because I could be with him as well, to be in the same ministry group. So yeah, that's part of what he was like in undergrad. Oh, and he really loved his black Kia car. I remember going inside it. It was like, it had a coconut smell. I really didn't like coconut, but it was a pretty nice car.
Yeah, I missed that car. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Nicholas. I didn't pay him to say any of that stuff, by the way. So, yeah, it's really neat that we're out here serving in Chicago together. Really appreciate kind of the history that we have. You know, got to see each other. I think you got to see me through my first, I guess like from when I got married, and then after I had Emma too. So
Yeah.
I have memories of you playing with Emma when she was an infant in my living room, and when we were like really like struggling from lack of sleep, and probably didn't make any sense in your senior year of college. But yeah, those are really sweet times to remember. So maybe to end off, I've been asking you a bunch of questions. So now we'll turn it around and do a little reverse interview and give you a chance to ask me maybe just like one or two questions.
Okay.
And we'll wrap up with that.
Yeah. Well, because you were my leader at that time, like, what was it like ministering to me? Because I know like you probably saw me through like my before Christian days to after Christian to trying to become more Christian. Like, yeah, how was that? Like, what was I like during that time? How was that experience?
Yeah, I'm blessed with bad memory, so I have a lot of details. But no, what I do remember is I actually remember a distinct conversation I had with Kata. I forget what year you were. I'm pretty sure this was like maybe right around the time you were. It might have been like right after you became Christian, and kind of I think you went through that period that you were describing where you were kind of struggling through some stuff and trying to. And that's a common experience. Like after someone becomes a Christian, they have to now like try to live it out, and there's some struggle involved in that. And I remember talking with Kata and saying, man, like Nicholas, like he's this kind of guy who he's so disciplined, like, and when he wants something, like he's gonna go get it. And I remember you just have like nearly photographic memory, so like, which is kind of dangerous actually, because you remember like everything about our interactions. So. But anyways, so I remember telling her, man, if we can get him to get excited about Jesus, I think he'll be a force for good in this world. And so, yeah, and I'm thankful that in some ways I'm seeing that play out. I've seen you take steps of faith, and so for me, like it's like when I watched you kind of take your different steps of faith, I could see God working in your life. I could see it was the Holy Spirit convicting you, because I honestly didn't feel like it was anything we were doing. I mean, yeah, I'm sure we were doing a lot. Like, we were meeting with you guys constantly. We had Bible studies, we had prayer meetings. I mean, we were teaching you a lot. We were feeding you a lot, like,
Yeah.
But just pouring out into you guys. But like, I don't know, like somehow when people make decisions to like, oh, I want to take God seriously in this, or hey, I want to take the step of faith by like going on this mission trip, or I want to let go of this like idol in my life. Like whenever that happens, it's frankly to me, it's a wonder. It's that person responding to what the Holy Spirit is doing in their heart. And so I think I got to see that clearly in your life. And so for me, during that period, it was actually a time when I was struggling with some other things. I was fighting with my parents about some things during that time. And so it was kind of an emotionally really draining period for me, but I actually got a lot of strength out of ministering to you and to your class during that period. So you guys were in some ways kind of like, we viewed it as God encouraging us through you guys. And you probably don't view yourself in that way as you think about that time, but that is actually how I process that time for myself personally. So
wow, thank you for sharing that. I didn't know about that, so that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I guess last question is, I know in my senior year you became full-time, and that was pretty shocking to me. Just knowing that you were like pretty high up there, also like in Salesforce, and then all of a sudden you became full-time. And so my question is, like, why did you want to become a full-time college minister?
Yeah, we kind of talked about this topic at length in the last episode with that I recorded with Toph. But I think my short answer to like why I wanted to become full-time was because I think there was I think I was always open to it, and there was a kind of a good synergy or a match between, I guess, the giftings that I had or the things that I could offer the church and the need that the church had at the time. And I think just the timing worked out in a way where, the church was looking for more guys, more brothers to go full time and to become church planters. And I think at the right point in my development as a minister, right? I had been in college ministry for about 6 or 7 years already. I had led your guys' class, led a small group, kind of learned to teach on a weekly basis, teach Bible study and things like that. And it sort of just seemed like the natural next step for me. And Kata and I had been talking about it for a while. I talked about it in the last episode, but I even asked her about it when we were dating. So when the opportunity came up, for me, it was God offering it to me. God saying like, "Hey, do you want to trust me in this?" And and I'm always telling the students that they have to take steps of faith, right? I'm the people I'm ministering to. And so for me, when those opportunities come up for myself, I have to say yes, and not just because the students, but because I think that's just what I'm called to do. Like, I think God wants me to trust him in whatever he offers me. So just over the years, I think I've just learned to say yes to those opportunities that come up. So,
well, amen.
All right. Well, thanks, Nicholas. Is there anything, any last thoughts you want to leave the audience with? Just based on our discussion today, we talked a lot about your kind of personal journey, but any lessons or advice that you want to leave?
Yeah. I guess to wrap up, just one thing I would encourage you, if you're having trouble with your own spiritual life, what really helped me was just trying to serve and love other people. I think once you get out of yourself and out of your own struggles and what you're internally thinking, and you try to actually love others, it does something to your heart. It makes you more of a loving person, and it also helps you get out of that mood of down on feeling down as well. And so I'd really encourage whoever's listening to take steps of faith of trying to love, trying to share the gospel with others, and try to do it with other people as well. That really helps as well. And I think you'll experience Christian life being more living and active than what you may have experienced in the past.
Amen. All right, thanks, Nicholas. Yep. We're gonna wrap up here now. Let me try cueing my outro music here. Here we go. Ooh. Oh no, it's not working. Ooh. Oh, there we go. So anyways, so that was our first attempt at doing BTS, behind the staff, telling stories behind how the staff got to where they are right now. And hey, if you guys have any questions that you want answered or topics that you want covered in the podcast, I really want your feedback. So you can do that. If you look at the show notes or look at the podcast description, you'll see a little bit.ly link, bit.ly/dpod-ama. Okay, so dpod, ask me anything, and you can submit your questions or your topics there. All right, well, that's it for today. Have a good day.